There is a kind of love that never announces itself. It does not arrive with flowers or celebrations or words carefully arranged to impress. It comes quietly, folded into the small corners of ordinary days. It speaks in the language of worn shoes and cold meals eaten last, of hands that work until they crack, of sacrifices so routine they stop looking like sacrifices at all. This is a story about that kind of love, and about the moment one man finally saw it, years after it mattered most, in the most unexpected place of all. In a battered old wallet, in the last note left inside it. His name was Daniel. He was 34 years old when his father passed, and he had not spoken to the man in nearly 6 years. Not from cruelty, not entirely. Life had happened the way life sometimes does. Daniel had moved to the city after college, built a career in finance, met a woman named Sarah, and somewhere along the way, the calls home became shorter and then fewer and then almost nothing. His father, a quiet man named George, had never complained. He had never once called to say, "You are forgetting me." He simply kept a photograph of Daniel on the kitchen table, next to the salt and pepper, where he could see it every morning while he drank his tea. Daniel did not know about the photograph until after the funeral. He did not know about a great many things until after the funeral. George had died on a Tuesday morning in October. A neighbor had found him. The obituary in the local paper described him as a retired postal worker, a man of few words, a lover of gardening and old radio programs. It described him as a father. Daniel read that word and felt something hollow open inside his chest. He drove the 4 hours back to his childhood home alone. Sarah had offered to come. He told her he needed to do this part by himself, and that was true, though he could not have explained exactly what this part was. He only knew that there was something waiting for him in that house, some reckoning with himself that he had been postponing for a very long time. The house smelled the same. That was the first thing that got him. After 6 years, after all that distance, the house smelled exactly the same. Like wood and old books and something faintly herbal, rosemary maybe, something his father had always kept in a jar on the windowsill. Daniel stood in the doorway for a long moment before he could bring himself to move. The rooms were small and tidy. His father had never been a man of excess. The furniture was the same furniture from Daniel's childhood. The curtains were the same. The clock on the mantel was the same clock, still ticking, as though time itself hadn't noticed that the man who wound it every Sunday was gone. There was paperwork to sort. The neighbor, a kind woman named Mrs. Elaine, had organized what she could. There was a will, simple and handwritten, leaving the house and its modest contents to Daniel. There were utility bills, neatly filed. There was a small tin box in the kitchen drawer that held enough money to cover the funeral, set aside for exactly that purpose, as though George had known and had not wanted to leave Daniel with even that burden. Daniel sat at the kitchen table for a long time, just breathing. And then he saw it. The wallet. It was sitting on the kitchen counter beside the sink, as though his father had simply set it down before doing the dishes and never come back to pick it up. It was old. Brown leather, so cracked and worn that the surface had gone soft and almost velvety. Daniel recognized it immediately. He had seen that wallet his entire childhood. He remembered as a small boy watching his father open it at the grocery store, at the gas station, at the school supply shop every August before the new year started. He picked it up. It was lighter than he expected. Inside there was a driver's license expired, a library card, a small laminated prayer card from a church Daniel barely remembered attending as a child, the edges gone yellow, a loyalty card for a hardware store with 7 of the 10 stamps filled in, and in the main bill compartment, folded once, a single note. Daniel unfolded it. It was not cash. It was a handwritten note, on a piece of paper that had been folded and unfolded so many times the creases had gone soft, and the paper had taken on a texture like cloth. The handwriting was his father's, small and careful and slightly slanted to the right, the way it had always been. The note read, Daniel, if you ever find this, I want you to know something I was never very good at saying out loud. I am proud of you. I have always been proud of you. Not because of your job or your grades or anything you achieved, though those things made me smile. Because of who you are. Because when you were 7 years old and a boy at school was being left out at lunch, you sat next to him. Your teacher told me. I kept that. I keep everything about you, even when you are far away. You owe me nothing. Not visits, not calls, not explanation. You are living the life I worked to give you the chance to live. That is enough. That is everything. All I ever wanted was for you to be okay. Are you okay? I hope you are okay. Love, Dad. Daniel sat down on the floor. He did not plan to. His legs simply gave way, and he sat down on the linoleum floor of the kitchen where he had eaten 1,000 breakfasts, where his father had packed his school lunches, where George had stood at the stove on Saturday mornings making eggs with the radio playing softly in the background. He sat there, and he held that note, and he wept in a way he had not wept since he was a child. He wept for the calls he hadn't made. He wept for the Christmases that became shorter every year until they stopped. He wept for all the times he had thought, next month, next summer, when things slowed down, I'll go back. He wept for his father, who had written that note and folded it into his wallet and carried it with him everywhere, like a secret meant only for Daniel, waiting patiently to be delivered. He wept because his father had known that the distance had grown, known that life had pulled them apart, and had chosen not to make Daniel feel guilty for it. Had chosen, instead, to simply love him across the silence. That night Daniel did not go to a hotel. He slept in his old room in his old bed, and he lay in the dark and thought about what it means to love someone without conditions. His father had never asked him to call more, had never guilted him, had never said, "You should come home." He had simply held on to his love for Daniel the way you hold on to something precious, quietly, carefully, without making a fuss of it. Daniel thought about the photograph on the kitchen table. He had gone to look at it before bed. It was a photo from Daniel's college graduation, 8 years ago. George was standing behind him, one hand on his son's shoulder. Grinning in that slightly awkward way of his, not a man comfortable in front of cameras but unwilling to miss the moment. Daniel had not known, when that picture was taken, that it would end up on his father's kitchen table for the next 8 years. Had not known that his father looked at it every morning. He had assumed, without ever saying it, that his father would just always be there. That there would be time. That the conversation where he finally said all the things he meant to say would happen eventually, at some future point that never quite arrived. He understood now how costly that assumption had been. In the days that followed, Daniel went through his father's things slowly. He found evidence of a life he had not been fully present for. A garden out back that was impeccably tended, with roses his mother had planted before she died, which George had maintained for 20 years in her absence. A shelf of paperback novels, all read multiple times, with tiny pencil marks in the margins. Notes his father had made to himself. A page bookmarked with a bus ticket from a city 2 hours away, a city Daniel had moved to years ago. He asked Mrs. Elaine about the bus ticket. She told him that George had come to visit once a few years back. He had not told Daniel. He had simply taken the bus to the city, walked around, found the neighborhood where Daniel lived, sat in a coffee shop across the street from Daniel's apartment building for an hour, then taken the bus home. He had not knocked on the door, had not called ahead. He had simply wanted to see where his son lived, to know that the street was safe, that the building looked solid, that the neighborhood seemed okay. Then he had gone home. Daniel had been inside that building the entire time, 40 feet away from his father, without knowing it. He had to step outside when Mrs. Elaine told him that. He stood in the garden, among his mother's roses, and he breathed until the tightening in his chest eased. He thought about that image for a very long time. His father on a bus, alone, traveling 2 hours each way just to stand near his son for an hour without disturbing him, not wanting to intrude, not wanting to make Daniel feel obligated, just wanting to be near him, just wanting to see with his own eyes that his child was okay, just wanting to be close to someone he loved. There is a particular kind of grief that comes not just from losing someone, but from understanding them too late. It is a grief that has no clean edges. It does not simply mourn the person. It mourns the conversations that didn't happen, the visits that were postponed, the words that were saved for a later that never came. It asks questions that cannot be answered anymore. It sits with you in quiet rooms and replays moments, looking for the places where things could have been different. Daniel carried that grief home with him. He carried the wallet too. He put it on his desk in his office, where he could see it every day. He started calling people, friends he hadn't spoken to in too long, an uncle he had slowly lost touch with, his college roommate who had reached out twice in the past year and received short, distracted replies. He started saying the things he meant while there was still time to say them. He became, as Sarah later described it, a man who had woken up. But it was more than that, and Daniel knew it. It was not just that he had woken up. It was that he had finally understood what love looks like when it does not ask anything in return. His father had loved him the way the sun warms a room, not asking to be thanked for it, not keeping score, not withdrawing itself when the window was left closed too long. Just there, constant, steady, patient. George had lived his whole quiet life pouring love into a son who was too busy, too far away, too caught up in the forward momentum of his own story to look back and receive it. And George had never once stopped, had never once said, "Enough, I'm done." He had folded his love into a note and tucked it into his wallet and carried it like a torch, waiting for the right moment. The right moment, as it turned out, came too late for thank yous, too late for apologies, too late for the visit Daniel kept meaning to make, the phone call he kept meaning to return. It came in the quiet aftermath, when there was nothing left to do but understand. And maybe that is the hardest truth of love. That sometimes it is only in the silence after someone is gone that we finally hear everything they were trying to tell us all along. Daniel framed the note eventually, not to put on the wall where guests could see it, but in a small frame he kept in his bedside drawer, where he could take it out whenever he needed reminding of what love actually looks like. Not in grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but in bus tickets taken in secret, in photographs kept on kitchen tables, in notes folded and refolded until the paper goes soft, tucked into wallets alongside expired driver's licenses and half-stamped loyalty cards. Reminding himself, too, that the people who love us most are often the ones we think we can postpone, the ones we assume will still be there, the ones whose constancy we mistake for an infinite resource rather than the finite, mortal gift that it actually is. He does not know if his father ever felt lonely. He hopes not. He hopes the garden was enough, and the books and the photograph on the table, and the knowledge, which George seemed to carry with a certainty Daniel is still working to understand, that love given freely is its own reward, that you do not have to be thanked to have loved well. He thinks about the note sometimes, about the question at the end of it, that one small, careful question his father had written in that neat slanted hand. "Are you okay? I hope you are okay." He answers it sometimes, quietly, to himself, to the drawer, to whoever or whatever might still be listening across whatever distance separates the living from those who have gone. "I'm okay, Dad," he says. "I'm getting there." If there is someone in your life who loves you quietly, who doesn't make demands, who simply shows up in the small and steady ways that are easy to overlook, please don't wait. Don't wait for the right moment, or the right words, or the right stretch of time when things will finally slow down enough to allow you to look backward and say what you mean. Because the wallet will only be found once. The note can only be written once. But the call you haven't made yet, that one still has time. The door you haven't walked back through, it may still be open. The words you've been meaning to say, they are still yours to give. George didn't write that note hoping Daniel would find it after he was gone. He wrote it hoping Daniel would find it while there was still something to do with it, That is the kindness of it. That is the love of it. Don't let the last note be the only one they ever read. If this story touched something in you, if it made you think of someone you love, someone you've been meaning to reach out to, then perhaps the best thing you can do after watching this is to stop, put down the phone for a moment, and take that first small step. Then come back to us. We tell these stories at Taylor's Laundry because we believe in the power of ordinary human moments, the moments that don't make headlines but make lives. If you'd like to hear more stories like this one, please subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. And if this story meant something to you, a like goes a long way in helping more people find their way to these words. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And wherever you are right now, we hope you're okay. We really do.